The silence in the apartment was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. It pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating, a physical weight in the dust-filled air. Cardboard boxes slumped around me like defeated soldiers, their flaps open, spilling the guts of a life I no longer recognized. My life, or what was left of it. Daniel was gone, 6 years just like that. Vanished, taking with him the very air I breathed, or so it felt. His parting words echoed in the cavern of my empty chest, a cruel mantra on repeat. No one will ever love you like I did, because no one else could tolerate you. He'd delivered the line with that infuriatingly calm expression he always wore when he was about to detonate a bomb in my world. A slight tilt of his head, a patronizing softness in his eyes, as if he were doing me a favor. And the worst part? The most soul-crushing, horrifying part? I believed him. Every syllable. It settled into the cracks he'd so expertly chiseled into my self-worth over the years, a perfect, devastating fit. I sank onto the bare mattress, the only piece of furniture not yet claimed by the impending move. A move to where? I hadn't a clue. Some smaller, cheaper place where I could be alone with the ghost of his pronouncements. My fingers traced the indentations on the worn fabric, the ghost of his body beside mine. Flashes, sharp and unwanted, pricked at my mind. Maya's face, her laughter, the way we used to finish each other's sentences. That was before Daniel, before he'd subtly, skillfully painted her as a bad influence, too wild, not supportive enough of us. My brother James, his brow furrowed with concern during that last disastrous family dinner. He's not right for you, Eliza, he'd said, his voice low and urgent. Daniel had overheard, of course, the ensuing argument, the icy withdrawal, the apologies I'd offered for James's audacity. It all came rushing back. I'd chosen Daniel over everyone. My art! My God! My art! Canvases gathering dust in the spare room Daniel had claimed as his office. The vibrant colors I used to splash with such abandon, now muted, forgotten. It's a nice hobby, babe, he'd say. But it's not going to pay the bills, is it? Focus on supporting my career. We need stability. And I, eager to please, desperate for his approval, had packed away my brushes, my passion, piece by piece. He was right. Who could tolerate me? I was a shell, a people pleaser with nothing left to please anyone with. I was exhausting, even to myself. The weight of his judgment, his constant, subtle critiques, had hollowed me out until I was nothing but a mirror reflecting his desires, his opinions, his needs. My gaze drifted to the bedside table, a half-empty bottle of wine, a relic from last night's futile attempt to numb the ache. Next to it, a bottle of sleeping pills, prescribed weeks ago when the anxiety first started to claw at my insides. I picked it up. The plastic was cool against my palm. I wasn't thinking about suicide, not explicitly. It was more a weariness, a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. I just wanted the noise to stop. The voice in my head, his voice, telling me I was worthless, unlovable, a burden. I unscrewed the cap, the little click echoing in the oppressive quiet, poured a few pills into my hand, then a few more, washed them down with a long swig of the lukewarm wine. Lying back, I closed my eyes. The room spun, a slow, sickening lurch. I didn't fight it. There was nothing left to fight for. Daniel had won. He'd snuffed out every spark, every flicker of who I once was. As the darkness started to creep in at the edges of my consciousness, a strange sensation bloomed in my chest. A pulling, a tightening, like an invisible cord yanking me backward, away from the edge. It was the last thing I felt before everything went black. A groan escaped my lips. My head throbbed, a dull, persistent ache behind my eyes. The light filtering through the curtains was too bright, stabbing at my retinas. I tried to sit up, a wave of nausea washing over me. Where was I? This wasn't the empty, box-filled apartment. My hand went to my head, and I froze. The sheets beneath my fingers. They were familiar. Too familiar. My old duvet cover, the one with the faded sunflowers I'd had since college. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I scrambled out of bed, my legs shaky. The room spun into focus. My old posters on the wall, a vintage travel ad for Paris, a band that had broken up years ago. My cluttered desk piled high with textbooks and sketch pads. My reflection in the cheap, full-length mirror propped against the wall. It was me, but younger. My hair was longer, shinier, without the sprinkle of stress-induced grays I'd started to notice. My face was fuller, no dark circles, no haunted, hollowed-out look in my eyes. The exhaustion that had become my constant companion was gone. Instead, I looked fresh, almost vibrant. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up my throat. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be real. I lurched towards the desk, my hand trembling as I reached for my phone. An older model, one I hadn't used in years. I pressed the home button. The screen lit up. The date. My breath hitched. No, it couldn't be. 5 years. 5 years in the past. My eyes scanned the room again frantically, searching for some sign, any sign, that this was a dream, a hallucination, a side effect of the pills and wine. But everything was too real, too solid. The scent of my old lavender laundry detergent. The specific way the floorboard creaked by the window. My gaze fell on a calendar tacked to the wall. A freebie from a local pizza place. The month. The year. It confirmed what the phone had screamed at me. It was exactly 3 months before I'd originally met Daniel. A choked sob escaped me. Disbelief warred with a dawning, terrifying wonder. I stumbled to the window, yanking back the curtains. The street outside was the same, yet different. Older cars. The coffee shop across the road still had its old signage. "This isn't happening," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "This is a dream, a very, very vivid dream." But it didn't feel like a dream. It felt solid, real. My skin tingled. I pinched myself hard, pain, sharp and definite, not a dream. My mind raced, a chaotic jumble of fear and confusion. How? Why? Was I dead? Was this some bizarre afterlife, the pulling sensation I'd felt? Had it been this? Then a thought, so sudden and clear it cut through the fog of panic. Grandma. My grandmother had passed away 3 years into my relationship with Daniel. A slow, painful decline that he'd barely acknowledged. Too wrapped up in his own world, too irritated by my grief. If this was truly the past, my fingers fumbled with the phone, my heart pounding a deafening rhythm. I scrolled through the contacts, my vision blurring. There, Grandma's number. With a trembling finger, I pressed call. The line clicked. It rang once, twice. "Hello?" Her voice, her actual voice. Warm, a little crackly, achingly familiar. The sound of home, of safety, of unconditional love. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unstoppable. "Grandma!" I choked out, my voice thick with unshed grief and a wild, burgeoning hope. "Eliza, dear, is that you? You sound a bit funny. Everything all right, love?" I couldn't speak. I just sobbed, a raw, animal sound of pain and relief and utter, overwhelming disbelief. She was alive. She was alive. After a few garbled attempts at reassurance, promising to call her back, I hung up, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped the phone. It was real. Somehow, impossibly, I was back. 5 years in the past, before Daniel, before the slow erosion of my soul, before he'd convinced me I was nothing. The shock began to recede, replaced by a surge of something else, something fierce and unfamiliar, determination. This wasn't just a second chance, this was a do-over, a chance to rewrite my story, a chance to save myself, a vow, silent but powerful, formed in the core of my being. Never again. I would never let him break me again. I would never let him dim my light. This time, Eliza Chen was going to live. Really live. And Daniel Walker, he could watch. The first few days were a blur of careful observation and quiet readjustment. I moved through my old new life like a ghost, half expecting to wake up back in that empty apartment, the taste of cheap wine and despair still on my tongue. But each morning, I woke up in my sunflower print duvet, the younger, healthier version of me staring back from the mirror. I spent hours just looking at myself. My body felt different, lighter. The constant ache in my shoulders from years of tension was gone. The slight paunch I'd developed from Daniel's preferred diet of takeout and comfort food, his comfort, not mine, was absent. My skin, once dull and lifeless, had a faint glow. It was like shedding an old heavy coat I hadn't even realized I was wearing. The physical toll of his emotional abuse had been that insidious, that gradual. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Maya, coffee, SOS. Need to vent about art history professor, you free? My breath caught. Maya, my best friend. The one I'd let Daniel push away with his subtle insinuations and manufactured dramas. In my first life, by this point, our friendship was already strained. The cracks beginning to show as I prioritized Daniel's needs, his schedule, his opinions. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The old Eliza, the people-pleasing Eliza, would have checked Daniel's non-existent in this timeline schedule first, made excuses, offered a vague maybe later. Not this Eliza, me. Absolutely. Starbucks on Main and 20? My treat. Seeing her was like a punch to the gut in the best possible way. Her bright, infectious laugh, the way her hands flew when she talked, her eyes sparkling with creative energy. We fell back into our old rhythms so easily it was like no time had passed, or rather, like the wrong time had been erased. You seem different, Maya said, tilting her head, her dark eyes appraising me over her latte. Good different. Lighter somehow. I just smiled. Maybe I finally got some sleep. She launched into a hilarious, dramatic account of her tyrannical art history professor, and I listened, truly listened, not just waiting for my turn to speak or worrying about what someone else might think. I laughed until my sides hurt. It felt liberating, like a part of me I'd thought was dead had just twitched back to life. The next step was my career, or what was left of it in the original timeline. I'd been working at Creative Spark, a small but vibrant advertising agency. I'd loved it. The brainstorming sessions, the thrill of a campaign coming together, the satisfaction of seeing an idea take flight. Then Daniel had come along. His career was always more important, more demanding. He'd subtly undermined my ambitions, suggesting my job was cute but not serious, that my energy was better spent supporting him. I'd eventually caved, going part-time, then freelance from home, then hardly at all. My spark had dwindled to a barely glowing ember. I walked into Creative Spark the following Monday. My portfolio, the original pre-Daniel one, full of bold ideas and quirky designs, tucked under my arm. Vivian Park, the creative director, a sharp, stylish woman in her 40s, with an uncanny ability to spot talent, looked up as I approached her office. "Eliza Chen," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "Thought you'd fallen off the face of the earth. What can I do for you?" In my first life, I'd been intimidated by Vivian, always second-guessing myself, stammering through presentations. This time, I met her gaze directly. "I want back in," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Full time. I have some ideas I think you'll like." The old criticisms, Daniel's voice still echoed in the back of my mind. "You're not good enough. Your ideas are silly. Don't embarrass yourself." I pushed them down, focusing on Vivian's appraising look. I spent the rest of the week reacclimating, catching up on projects, relearning the agency rhythm. During a brainstorming session for a new client, a local bakery, Mark, a senior copywriter, shot down an idea I tentatively offered. "A bit too whimsical, Eliza. Let's stick to something more traditional." The old me would have shrunk, apologized, nodded meekly. My face flushed, but not with shame, with a flicker of defiance. "Actually, Mark," I said, my voice surprisingly firm, "their brand is all about being unique, a bit quirky. Whimsical might be exactly what they need to stand out from the generic chains." Vivian, who'd been observing silently, raised an eyebrow. "Eliza has a point. Explore that angle, team." Mark looked momentarily surprised, then nodded. A small victory, but it felt monumental. I'd spoken up. I'd defended my idea, and I hadn't crumbled. Later that evening, as I was sketching out some concepts for the bakery campaign, a horrifying realization hit me. It wasn't just Daniel. Yes, he had been the architect of my ultimate undoing, the one who systematically dismantled my self-worth. But the foundation for that destruction, I had laid some of those bricks myself. Even before him, I'd been too quick to yield, too afraid of disapproval, too hungry for validation. I'd already been surrendering small pieces of myself, chipping away at my own confidence, long before his expert hands finished the job. He hadn't created my insecurities. He'd just been a master at exploiting them. The thought was both sickening and, in a strange way, empowering. If I had a hand in my own unmaking, then I damn well could have a hand in my remaking. This second chance wasn't just about avoiding Daniel. It was about rebuilding Eliza from the ground up, on a foundation of her own making. This time, she wouldn't be so easy to topple. It started with small things, tiny deviations from the script of my first life. Saying yes to Maya's spontaneous invitation to a gallery opening, I would have previously deemed too frivolous, or not Daniel approved. Ordering the spicy dish at a restaurant instead of the bland one, I knew Daniel preferred even though he wasn't there, his phantom preferences still trying to dictate my choices. Each yes to myself, each small act of defiance against the ingrained patterns of my past, felt like a ripple spreading outwards. I reconnected with friends I'd let drift away, people Daniel had subtly, or not so subtly, disapproved of. There was Sarah, with her booming laugh and slightly inappropriate jokes, who Daniel had called crass. And Ben, my old college study buddy, a gentle soul passionate about environmental causes, whom Daniel had dismissed as a tree-hugging loser. It was awkward at first, explaining my long silence, but they were surprisingly understanding, welcoming me back into the fold with open arms and only a few gentle teases about my hermit phase. Our weekends started to fill up with hiking trips, board game nights, and impromptu potlucks. A vibrant tapestry of connection I hadn't realized how much I'd starved for. My relationship with my brother James began to heal too. In my first life, Daniel had driven a wedge between us, painting James as overprotective and judgmental. I'd believed him, of course. Now, without Daniel's constant interference, I saw James's concern for what it was: love. I called him regularly, met him for coffee, actually listened to his advice. "You seem happier, Eliza," he said one afternoon, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Like your old self, but more solid, somehow." "I'm working on it," I replied, and for the first time, I truly felt like I was. At Creative Spark, the ripples were turning into waves. Fueled by a new sense of purpose, I poured my energy into my work. The bakery campaign I'd tentatively defended, it became my baby. I stayed late, sketching, brainstorming, refining. I pitched an idea that was decidedly not traditional. A series of whimsical illustrated ads featuring talking pastries and a tagline that played on the idea of finding your sweet escape. Mark had scoffed. "Talking pastries? Are we serious?" But Vivian had leaned forward, a glint in her eye. "I like it. It's memorable. It's different. Develop it, Eliza." And I did. The campaign was a hit. The client loved it. Sales at the bakery soared. Vivian called me into her office a few weeks later. "That bakery campaign," she said, tapping a printout of one of the ads. "That was bold, Eliza, and brilliant. I haven't seen that kind of spark from you in, well, ever, if I'm being honest." My cheeks warmed, but this time it was with pride, not embarrassment. "Thank you, Vivian." "I'm putting you on the pitch team for the new tech account," she continued. "It's a big one. Don't let me down." A thrill coursed through me. The tech account was a major opportunity, one I wouldn't have even dreamed of being considered for in my past life. I noticed it then, how people responded to me differently. When I spoke with conviction, when I didn't back down, when I owned my ideas, they listened. It wasn't about being aggressive, it was about being present, about believing in my own voice. The more I valued myself, the more others seemed to value me too. Life felt good, full. I was surrounded by friends, my family ties were strengthening, and my career was finally taking off. I was rediscovering passions I'd thought were long dead, signing up for a pottery class, dusting off my old guitar. I was Eliza Chen, version 2.0, and she was, I had to admit, pretty damn cool. Then, one Tuesday morning during the weekly team meeting, it happened. Sarah, one of the account managers, was giving an update. "And we're looking at a potential collaboration with Walker Innovations for the new app launch," she said casually, scrolling through her notes. "Their marketing lead, Daniel Walker, is supposed to be some kind of boy genius. He's coming in next month to discuss synergy." Daniel Walker. The name hit me like a physical blow. My blood ran cold. I could feel the color drain from my face. My carefully constructed new world tilted on its axis. He was here. Or he would be soon. The past I thought I was outrunning was about to collide head-on with my present. 3 months? My mental countdown had been off, or maybe this was the universe's sick sense of humor. He wasn't supposed to be a part of this new life. I had meticulously planned to avoid him, to steer clear of the places and people that had led me to him the first time around. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The butterfly effect. My new choices, my new path, had somehow, inexplicably, still led me to his doorstep. Or rather, him to mine. My hands clenched under the table. Fear, a cold, familiar serpent, uncoiled in my stomach. But this time, something else was there too. A spark of anger, a flicker of defiance. I had come too far to crumble now. This wasn't the end, it was just another test. And this time, I wasn't the same fragile, insecure girl he'd met all those years ago. This time, I was ready. Or at least, I would be. The next few weeks were a strange mixture of focused productivity and a low hum of dread. Every time the office door opened, every time a new male voice drifted down the hallway, my stomach would lurch. I knew, logically, that the meeting with Walker Innovations was still weeks away. I'd even subtly checked Sarah's calendar, but logic had little sway over the visceral Pavlovian response his name now evoked in me. I threw myself into my work with a vengeance, partly to distract myself, partly to build up my armor. The tech account pitch was my Everest, and I was determined to conquer it. Late nights became the norm, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the burning desire to prove not just to Vivian, but to myself, that I was capable, that I was more than Daniel had ever allowed me to be. Maya was my rock. I hadn't told her about the rebirth. How could I? But I'd confessed my history with a Daniel Walker from my past, painting him as a manipulative ex I was terrified of encountering again in a professional setting. So this guy was a world-class gaslighter, huh? She'd said, her eyes narrowed with protective fury. Don't worry, Eli. If he shows up, I'll be your human shield. Or, accidentally spill a scalding hot latte on his boy genius lap. Her fierce loyalty was a balm to my frayed nerves. James, too, offered quiet support, his earlier warnings about Daniel now unspoken but understood. Just remember who you are now, Eliza, he'd said. You're stronger than you think. Were I? I hoped so. The day of the meeting arrived, cloaked in a dreary, rain-slicked morning that perfectly mirrored my mood. I'd chosen my outfit with care, a sharp, well-tailored pantsuit, heels that made me feel grounded and powerful, and minimal makeup. No trace of the girl who used to dress to please him, to fit his idea of what a girlfriend should look like. This was Eliza Chen, Creative Spark's rising star, not Daniel Walker's malleable plaything. I sat in the conference room, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, my breathing carefully controlled. Vivian was there, along with Sarah and a few other key team members. I could hear polite murmurs from the reception area. They were here. He was here. The door opened, and there he was, Daniel Walker. Looking exactly as I remembered, yet somehow different. Or maybe it was me who was different. He was undeniably handsome, with that easy, charismatic smile that had once made my knees weak. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit expensive, his confidence radiating off him like a force field. The same package that had once mesmerized me. Now, all I saw was the carefully constructed facade. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat. A wave of nausea, cold and sharp, washed over me. Hatred, fear, and a sickening, unwanted flicker of that old familiar attraction churned in my stomach. For a horrifying second, I was back in that empty apartment, his cruel words echoing in my ears. He swept his gaze around the room, his smile charmingly professional. His eyes met mine. And nothing, no flicker of recognition, no change in his expression. To him, I was just another face in a room, another cog in the corporate machine. Of course. Why would he remember me? In this timeline, we hadn't met. I was a stranger. The relief was so profound, so overwhelming, it almost buckled my knees. He didn't know me. I had the upper hand. Then his gaze snagged on me again. A slight pause, a subtle shift in his expression. His smile didn't falter, but something in his eyes, a flicker of interest, a sizing up. It was different from the polite dismissal of a moment ago. He was looking at me, really looking, not as a past conquest, but as someone new, someone intriguing. Sarah made the introductions. And this is Eliza Chen, one of our most talented creatives. She's been instrumental on the tech pitch. Daniel extended his hand towards me, his smile widening, turning up the charm by a few megawatts. Eliza Chen. A pleasure. I've heard good things. His voice, that smooth, persuasive baritone that had once lulled me into a state of utter devotion. His hand was warm, his grip firm. The brief contact sent an unwelcome jolt through me. I met his gaze, my expression carefully neutral, professional. "Mr. Walker," I said, my voice cool, steady. Infuriatingly, he didn't release my hand immediately. "Please, call me Daniel." His eyes held mine, a spark of something I couldn't quite decipher. Challenge? Interest? Amusement? In my first life, this was the moment I would have melted, fluttered my eyelashes, offered a shy, eager-to-please smile, desperate for his approval, his attention. This time, I simply nodded, withdrawing my hand. "Daniel." The meeting began. Daniel was every bit the boy genius he was reputed to be. Articulate, insightful, his arguments persuasive, his vision compelling. He commanded the room with an effortless confidence that was both impressive and, to me, deeply unsettling. I watched him, dissecting his every word, his every gesture, the charming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, the way he subtly dominated the conversation, steering it back to his points, the casual, almost imperceptible way he dismissed opinions that didn't align with his own. All the red flags fluttering like triumphant banners, invisible to everyone but me. I spoke when necessary, offering insights, asking pertinent questions. I kept my tone professional, my contributions concise and relevant. I didn't fawn, I didn't flatter, I didn't shrink. I simply existed, confidently, independently. I could feel his eyes on me occasionally, a lingering glance. A moment of focused attention when I spoke. He was curious, intrigued. Not by my vulnerability, as before, but by my composure, my confidence. It was a subtle shift in the dynamic, but it felt seismic. He wasn't in control, not with me. The meeting ended, handshakes were exchanged, polite murmurs of follow-ups and future collaborations. As Daniel was leaving, he paused by my chair. "Eliza," he said, his voice a little lower, more intimate, "I was very impressed with your insights today. Perhaps we could discuss them further, over coffee maybe?" There it was, the opening gambit. The first move in his well-rehearsed game of seduction and control. The old me would have swooned, agreed instantly, felt a thrill of validation. The new me? I offered a polite, professional smile. "Thank you, Daniel. Perhaps. My schedule is quite full at the moment with the tech pitch. I'll have my assistant check if there's a window." His eyebrows shot up just a fraction. Surprise? Annoyance? He quickly masked it with another charming smile. "Of course, I look forward to it." He walked away, leaving me with a churning stomach and a racing heart. I hadn't crumbled. I hadn't fallen back into old patterns. I'd held my ground. I'd maintained my boundaries. And I'd left him curious. It wasn't a victory, not yet. But it was a start. The game had begun. And this time, I knew the rules. The weeks following that first meeting with Daniel settled into a strange rhythm. Professionally, I was soaring. The tech pitch was consuming, challenging, and exhilarating. Vivian had given me significant responsibility, and I thrived under the pressure. My ideas were sharp, my presentations confident. I was leading brainstorming sessions, my voice no longer tentative, but clear and assured. My colleagues, who had once seen me as quiet and reserved, now treated me with a new level of respect. I was Eliza Chen, a force to be reckoned with, and damn, it felt good. Meanwhile, Daniel Walker began his pursuit. It was subtle at first, classic Daniel. An email praising a point I'd made in a follow-up document, with a casual suggestion for another coffee. A chance encounter in the lobby of a mutual client's building where he just happened to be. Little breadcrumbs of attention, designed to make me feel special, singled out. The same tactics that had worked so devastatingly well on the insecure, validation-starved Eliza of my first life. But I wasn't her anymore. I saw his moves for what they were, calculated, strategic. I responded politely, professionally, but always with a slight distance. My schedule remained incredibly busy. The coffee never materialized. I was a fortress, and he hadn't yet found a chink in the armor. This time, I wasn't navigating this emotional minefield alone. Maya was my constant confidant. We'd have hushed, giggly conversations over lunch, dissecting Daniel's latest move. "So, Mr. Boy Genius sent you another email about your brilliant insights?" Maya snorted, rolling her eyes. "And dude needs a new playbook, or maybe a restraining order." "It's like watching a nature documentary," I said, a wry smile on my face. "The predator stalking its prey. Except this time, the prey knows all his tricks." "And this prey has backup," Maya said, squeezing my arm. My brother James was another source of quiet strength. I didn't go into the details of Daniel's current pursuit, but he knew, on some intuitive level, that I was facing a demon from my past. His unwavering belief in my newfound strength was a silent reassurance. The contrast between Daniel's calculated attention and the genuine connections I was building elsewhere was stark. People at work were noticing me, not because I was trying to impress them, but because I was good at my job. I was building real professional relationships based on mutual respect and collaboration. And then there was Leo Kim. Leo worked in the photography department at Creative Spark. He was quiet, thoughtful, with kind eyes, and a shy smile. In my first life, I'd barely registered his existence. Daniel had consumed all my attention, all my energy. I vaguely remembered Leo trying to strike up a conversation with me once or twice, but I'd been too distracted, too wrapped up in Daniel's drama to notice. This time I noticed, he'd often be in the break room when I was grabbing coffee, sketching in a small notepad. He had an artist's eye, a gentle demeanor that was the polar opposite of Daniel's aggressive charm. We started with polite nods, then small talk about work, about the city, about art. He had a dry wit that surprised me, a passion for photography that was infectious. "I saw your designs for the bakery campaign," he said one afternoon, his gaze appreciative. "They were really alive. You have a great eye for visual storytelling." Coming from him, a visual artist himself, the compliment meant something. It wasn't a calculated line designed to flatter. It felt genuine. "Thanks, Leo," I said, a warm feeling spreading through me. "That means a lot." He started seeking out my opinion on his own projects, showing me proofs of his latest shoots, asking for my input on composition and mood. Our conversations flowed easily, a comfortable exchange of creative ideas. There was no pressure, no agenda, just connection. Daniel, meanwhile, continued his love-bombing campaign. Flowers arrived at the office, a congratulations, for a minor project milestone he'd somehow heard about. Tickets to a gallery opening he thought I might enjoy. Each gesture was perfectly calibrated, designed to overwhelm, to create a sense of obligation, of indebtedness. I accepted them politely, thanked him professionally via email, and gave the flowers to Sarah at reception and the tickets to Maya. One afternoon, Leo found me staring intently at a proof for one of Daniel's company ads that had come through our agency for review. The tagline was slick, the imagery polished, but it felt hollow, soulless. "Something wrong?" Leo asked, leaning against the door frame of my office. I sighed, just looking at this. It's technically perfect, but there's no heart in it. Leo nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Sometimes the shiniest things are the most empty." His words resonated deeply. Daniel was all shine, all polished facade. Leo, with his quiet sincerity and genuine passion, was real. The contrast was a constant reminder of how far I'd come, of how much my perceptions had changed. In my first life, Daniel's intensity had felt like passion, his possessiveness like love. Now I saw it for what it was, a desperate need for control, a deep-seated insecurity masked by a veneer of charm. Leo's interest, on the other hand, was quiet, respectful. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He simply saw me, the real me. And he seemed to like what he saw. The parallel paths were clear. One led back to a past I was determined to escape. The other The other led somewhere new, somewhere unknown, somewhere that, for the first time in a long time, felt like hope. Daniel Walker was not a man accustomed to being ignored. Or perhaps more accurately, he wasn't used to his carefully honed tactics failing so spectacularly. My polite deflections, my consistent professional distance, were clearly starting to get under his skin. His emails became a little more frequent, his chance encounters a little less accidental seeming. There was a new edge to his charm, a subtle undercurrent of impatience. "Eliza, you're a hard woman to pin down," he said one afternoon, catching me as I was leaving a client meeting. His smile was still in place, but his eyes were a little tighter. "That coffee is starting to feel like a mythical creature." "My apologies, Daniel," I said, my tone breezy. "This tech pitch is a beast. You know how it is." "I do," he said, his gaze lingering. "But all work and no play, makes Eliza a dull girl." I offered a polite, noncommittal smile. "I'll keep that in mind." His frustration was a small, private victory. It showed me I was disrupting his pattern, that I wasn't responding as he expected. It was empowering. Meanwhile, my own professional star continued to rise. The tech pitch was a massive undertaking, and Vivian had thrown me into the deep end. I was co-leading the creative strategy, working insane hours, but loving every minute of it. One late evening, after a particularly grueling brainstorming session that had finally yielded a breakthrough concept, Vivian found me hunched over my desk, surrounded by sketches and empty coffee cups. "You look like hell, Chen," she said, but there was a smile in her voice. "But that concept you pitched today, that was pure gold." My heart swelled. "Thanks, Vivian. I think it's got legs." "It's got wings," she corrected. "Run with it. This could be huge for us, for you." Recognition, not just for a single campaign, but for my vision, my leadership. It was intoxicating. My social circle, too, was expanding. I was no longer the isolated, insecure girl who clung to one toxic relationship. I had Maya, James, my work friends, my pottery class acquaintances, a network of genuine connections, people who liked me, not some version of me I thought they wanted to see. One afternoon, Leo approached me, a hesitant smile on his face. "Eliza, I have a crazy idea," he began, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I'm working on a personal photography project, a series of portraits exploring the idea of hidden strengths. And I was wondering, if you'd consider being one of my subjects?" I was taken aback. "Me? Why?" His gaze was earnest. "Because I see it in you. This quiet resilience, this inner fire. You've changed a lot since I first met you. You're blooming. And I think it would make for a powerful image." His words, his perception of me touched something deep inside. He saw strength in me where Daniel had only ever seen weakness to be exploited. I'd be honored, Leo," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Our first photo session was in his small, light-filled studio. It was surprisingly comfortable. Leo had a gift for putting people at ease. He didn't direct me much, just talked, asked questions, observed. He captured moments of quiet contemplation, of unexpected laughter, of focused intensity. It felt real, authentic. The same week, Daniel shifted tactics. The flowers and casual invitations had failed. Now he was trying a new approach. He requested a formal meeting with me and Vivian, ostensibly to discuss cross-promotional opportunities between Walker Innovations and Creative Spark. The meeting was a masterclass in subtle manipulation. He was charming, self-deprecating, even vulnerable. He talked about his own struggles in the industry, his desire to build genuine partnerships. He painted himself as a changed man, someone who had learned from past mistakes, though he was conveniently vague about what those mistakes were. He directed most of his attention to Vivian, but his sidelong glances, his carefully chosen words were all for me. He was presenting himself as reformed, as the kind of man he thought I would want. It was a performance, and a damn good one. If I hadn't known the man behind the mask, I might have even been swayed. But I did know him. I knew the darkness he was capable of, the cruelty he hid beneath that polished veneer. "Eliza has such a unique creative vision," he said to Vivian, his eyes flicking to me. "I've been so impressed by her work. I believe our companies could achieve great things together if we approach it with a spirit of true collaboration. My internal conflict was a raging storm. Part of me, the part that still bore the scars of his abuse, screamed at me to run, to expose him, to warn Vivian. Another part, a colder, more calculating part, was morbidly curious. Could he have changed? Was it possible? The rational, reborn Eliza knew the answer was a resounding no. But the question lingered, a tiny, insidious seed of doubt. After the meeting, as we were walking back to our offices, Vivian turned to me. "He seems quite taken with you, Eliza." I forced a neutral expression. He's a very persuasive man. "That he is," Vivian said, her gaze shrewd. "But you, my dear, are no longer easily persuaded. Are you?" Her words were a lifeline. She saw my strength, even when I momentarily doubted it myself. Later that day, an email from Daniel landed in my inbox. Subject, just a thought. "Eliza, today's meeting was incredibly productive. I genuinely believe there's potential for something special here. On a more personal note, I was struck again by your intelligence and passion. I know your schedule is hectic, but I'd still love to pick your brain over coffee, away from the boardroom formalities. No pressure, just good conversation. Let me know if a window opens up. Best, Daniel." I stared at the email, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. My mind raced. He was good. So good. He was playing the long game, appealing to my ambition, my intellect, my ego. A dangerous idea began to form. What if I said yes? Not because I believed him, not because I was falling for his act, but to understand, to see up close if there was even a shred of genuine change in him, to gather intelligence perhaps, or maybe, just maybe, to prove to myself once and for all that I was immune to his charms. It was a reckless thought. Playing with fire. Maya would have a fit. James would be horrified. But the temptation, the perverse curiosity, was too strong to ignore. With a deep breath, I typed out a reply. "Daniel, coffee sounds fine. How about next Tuesday, 10 a.m. at the grind down the street?" Eliza. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The game had indeed changed, and I had just willingly stepped into the lion's den. The grind was bustling when I walked in the following Tuesday. The aroma of roasted coffee beans and an undercurrent of low chatter filled the air. I spotted Daniel at a small table near the window, already nursing a macchiato. He looked up as I approached, that familiar, practiced smile instantly appearing. "Eliza, punctual as always," he said, rising slightly. "Thanks for making the time." "Daniel," I replied, taking the seat opposite him. My heart was doing a weird staccato rhythm against my ribs, a mix of apprehension and a strange, detached curiosity. The waitress came over. I ordered a black Americano. He raised an eyebrow. "No complicated latte concoctions for you." "I like to keep things simple," I said, meeting his gaze. A small, almost imperceptible challenge. In our first life, he'd always teased me about my boring coffee choices, subtly steering me towards sweeter, milkier drinks, things he preferred. The conversation started casually enough. Work, industry trends, the challenges of the tech world. He was charming, engaging, witty. He asked insightful questions about my work, listened attentively, or appeared to, and even shared a few, carefully curated, I was sure, anecdotes about his own learning experiences. But as we talked, I started to see them. The old tactics, refined, more subtle perhaps, but undeniably there. The subtle negging disguised as a compliment. "You're surprisingly strategic for someone so creatively driven. Most artists I know are a bit more scattered." Translation: artists are flaky, but you're almost competent. The love bombing, more targeted now. That idea you had for the app's user interface? Genius, pure genius. I've been thinking about it all week. Translation: I'm focusing intensely on you, making you feel uniquely brilliant. The creation of artificial intimacy? He leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially when talking about a difficult colleague. "Between you and me, she's a nightmare to work with, but you seem like someone who gets it, someone who understands the nuances of these things." Translation: we share a secret, we're on the same wavelength, unlike others. It was like watching a magician perform a trick when you already knew the sleight of hand. fascinating in a clinical sort of way, and deeply, deeply unsettling. He hadn't changed. Not really. He'd just upgraded his operating system. But this time, I wasn't an unsuspecting audience member. I was a critic, an analyst, and I had my own arsenal. When he tried to subtly steer the conversation towards my personal life, "So, a brilliant, driven woman like you? Surely there's someone special sharing this journey." I deftly deflected. Right. My journey is pretty packed at the moment, Daniel. The tech pitch is my main focus. What about you? Walker Innovations must keep you incredibly busy. When he tried to play the misunderstood visionary card, talking about the sacrifices he'd made for his career, I didn't offer sympathy. I offered a pragmatic observation. It's a demanding industry. Success rarely comes without a cost. I used my knowledge of his insecurities, gleaned from 6 years of painful experience. I knew his deep-seated fear of not being seen as successful, his desperate need for validation, his competitiveness. I subtly poked at those pressure points, not cruelly, but enough to keep him slightly off balance. When he boasted about a recent acquisition, I asked a pointed question about market share that I knew would make him defensive. When he tried to impress me with his connections, I mentioned a recent industry event he hadn't been invited to. It was a delicate dance, a verbal chess match. He was trying to charm and disarm me. I was trying to observe and understand, while simultaneously protecting myself. The power dynamic was intoxicatingly different. I wasn't a quivering mess, desperate for his approval. I was his equal, perhaps even a step ahead, because I knew his game. Meanwhile, my collaboration with Leo was blossoming into something truly special. Our photo sessions for his Hidden Strengths project were becoming less about the project and more about the connection. We'd talk for hours about art, about life, about our dreams and fears. He was kind, genuine, and incredibly talented. His photographs of me were revelatory. He captured a strength, a resilience, a quiet joy in me that I was only just beginning to see in myself. There was an ease between us, a comfortable silence that spoke volumes more than Daniel's constant performative chatter. One evening, after a particularly good session with Leo, I met Maya for dinner. I confessed about the coffee with Daniel. She nearly choked on her wine. "Eliza, are you insane? What were you thinking?" I know, I said, holding up my hands. "It sounds crazy, but I needed to see, to understand." "Understand what? That a snake is still a snake, even if it sheds its skin?" Maya's eyes were narrowed with concern. "You're playing with fire, Eli. This guy is bad news. You know that." "I do," I admitted. "And he hasn't changed. Not really, but seeing him, talking to him, on my own terms, it was empowering. I wasn't scared. I wasn't intimidated. I saw right through him." Maya sighed, her expression softening. "Okay, I get it, sort of. But please, be careful. Don't let him get in your head again. He's a master manipulator." "I won't," I promised. "This isn't about him. It's about me." But was it? As I walked home that night, I replayed the coffee meeting in my mind. Had it truly been about healing? Or was there a part of me, a small, vengeful part, that enjoyed seeing him squirm just a little, that relished the power shift? The line between self-preservation and a thirst for retribution was becoming dangerously blurred. I made a decision. Minimal contact with Daniel Walker. Professional, polite, but strictly business. No more coffees. No more testing the waters. My focus needed to be on my own growth, my own happiness. On the genuine connections I was building, like the one with Leo, which felt like a ray of sunshine after a long, dark winter. Playing with fire was exhilarating, yes, but I knew, deep down, that if I wasn't careful, I was the one who would get burned. Again. And that was a risk I simply couldn't afford to take. The decision to maintain minimal contact with Daniel felt like closing a door on a drafty, unsettling room. My focus sharpened, zeroing in on the things that truly mattered. My work, my friendships, and the tentative, hopeful connection blossoming with Leo. The tech pitch was reaching its crescendo. Our team, under Vivian's guidance and with my creative concepts at the forefront, had developed a campaign that was innovative, edgy, and utterly compelling. The day we presented to the client was a blur of adrenaline and focused energy. I stood before a room full of skeptical executives and laid out our vision, my voice clear, my arguments persuasive. There were no tremors of insecurity, no desperate need for approval, just a calm, unshakable belief in our work. They loved it. The contract was ours. It was a monumental win for Creative Spark and a personal triumph for me. Vivian clapped me on the shoulder, her eyes shining with pride. You nailed it, Chen. You absolutely nailed it. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Congratulatory emails, celebratory drinks with the team, a buzz of excitement throughout the agency. Colleagues who had once barely registered my presence now sought out my opinion, praised my creativity, admired my confidence. Clients specifically requested me on their projects. I was no longer just Eliza Chen, the quiet girl in the corner. I was Eliza Chen, the rising star. Leo was one of the first to congratulate me, his smile genuine, his eyes warm. That's amazing, Eliza. I knew you had it in you. There was no trace of jealousy, no hint of professional rivalry, just pure, unadulterated support. It was such a refreshing contrast to how Daniel would have reacted. The subtle undermining, the attempts to share the credit, the insinuation that my success was somehow due to him. Daniel, of course, heard about the win. Walker Innovations was a competitor for the tech account. Our victory was, in a small way, his loss. I saw him a few days later at an industry networking event. He was holding court in the center of the room, surrounded by a sycophantic entourage. His eyes found mine across the crowded space. There was a flicker of something... surprise? Annoyance? Before his charming mask slid back into place, he made his way over to me, a drink in his hand. Eliza, heard about the big win. Congratulations. His tone was smooth, but there was a new tension in his jaw. Thank you, Daniel, I said, my voice calm. You're certainly making waves, he continued, his gaze intense. Everyone's talking about you. I'm just focused on doing good work, I replied, keeping my expression neutral. I could feel him watching me for the rest of the evening, his eyes following me as I mingled, as I laughed with colleagues, as I accepted congratulations from industry peers. He was witnessing my ascent, my growing popularity from the periphery. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that it was grating on him. He was a man who needed to be the center of attention, the one everyone admired. My success, independent of him, was a narrative he couldn't control. The strange thing was, his observation no longer unsettled me. It fueled me. Not in a vengeful way, but in a way that solidified my own sense of worth. I wasn't performing for him. I wasn't trying to prove him wrong. I was simply being. And it turned out, being myself was more than enough. The confidence I had initially been performing was slowly, surely becoming real. It was sinking into my bones, becoming a part of who I was. A few days later, a ridiculously large bouquet of exotic flowers arrived at my desk. The card was brief. To celebrate your continued success, you deserve it, D. It was a grand gesture, classic Daniel. Designed to impress, to overwhelm, to remind me of his presence. In my first life, such a display would have sent me into a tailspin of confusion and misplaced gratitude. Now I just felt a flicker of annoyance. I admired the flowers briefly. They were undeniably beautiful. Then handed them to the receptionist to distribute around the office. Later that week, Leo and I were finishing up a photo session. The Hidden Strengths project was nearly complete, and the images were stunning. He had captured something in me I hadn't known was there. These are incredible, Leo, I said, looking at the contact sheets. You have a real gift. The subject makes it easy, he said, his shy smile making my heart do a little flip. You're very, photogenic. There was an unspoken energy between us, a warmth that had been steadily growing. He packed up his equipment, and as he was about to leave, he paused at the door. Eliza, he said, his gaze direct. That industry event the other night. I saw Daniel Walker talking to you. He seems very interested. I met his eyes. He's a business acquaintance. Leo nodded slowly. Just be careful, okay? He has a certain reputation. I know, I said, my voice soft. And thank you for the warning, but I can handle Daniel. He searched my face for a moment, then seemed satisfied with what he saw. I know you can. He hesitated again. So the big tech campaign is launched. Things might be a little less crazy for you now? Hopefully, I laughed. In that case, he said, a hopeful look in his eyes, would you maybe want to grab dinner sometime? As not a photo subject? Just Eliza and Leo? My heart skipped a beat. Here was a genuine offer from a kind, talented, and genuinely interested man. No games, no manipulation, no hidden agenda. Just an invitation. Daniel's grand gesture, his attempt to reinsert himself into my narrative, suddenly seemed pathetic in comparison. He wanted to win my interest, to conquer, to possess. Leo just wanted to get to know me. The crossroads was clear. One path led back to the toxic games of the past, a chance to perhaps rub Daniel's nose in what he'd lost, but at what cost to my own peace? The other path led towards something new, something potentially wonderful and real. I looked at Leo, at his kind eyes and hopeful smile. The decision was surprisingly easy. I'd love to, Leo, I said. Dinner sounds perfect. The smile that lit up his face was brighter than any exotic flower. And for the first time, I realized Daniel Walker had no power over me anymore. Not because I was strong enough to resist him, but because I simply no longer cared. My focus was on my own rising star and the genuine constellations of people who were rising with me. Dinner with Leo was easy, comfortable, fun. We went to a little Italian place he knew, tucked away on a quiet side street. The conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by laughter and shared stories. There were no mind games, no subtext, no carefully constructed personas. Just two people connecting, genuinely interested in learning about each other. It was a revelation, and yet, a small, insidious part of me, the part that had been conditioned by years of Daniel's drama, found the lack of intensity unsettling. It was a twisted thought, I knew, but Daniel had always been a whirlwind, a roller coaster of highs and lows. This calm, steady connection with Leo felt foreign. Safe, yes, but my internal alarm system, so attuned to deciphering Daniel's manipulations, was still on high alert, searching for hidden meanings where there were none. A few days after my dinner with Leo, Daniel reached out again. An email, this time more direct. He was in the neighborhood of my office and suggested an impromptu catch-up. Against my better judgment, a sliver of the old curiosity, or perhaps a desire to test my own resolve, made me agree. Just this once, I told myself. To see, to confirm. We met at a coffee shop near Creative Spark. He was charming, of course, attentive. He asked about the tech campaign, congratulated me again on its success, and then, ever so subtly, began to steer the conversation towards us. You know, Eliza, he said, his voice a low, intimate murmur that used to send shivers down my spine. I can't help but feel we missed an opportunity back when we first met. There was a spark, wasn't there? I sipped my coffee, my expression carefully neutral. We were focused on business, Daniel. Were we? He smiled, that knowing, infuriating smile. I felt something more, and I get the sense you did too. And then the red flags started to unfurl, one by one, like a macabre parade. First, the subtle criticism, disguised as concern. You're working so hard, Eliza. It's admirable, but don't burn yourself out. You need someone to help you. Relax. Take care of you. Translation. You're not capable of managing your own life. You need me. Then, the possessiveness creeping in at the edges. So who's the lucky guy who gets to celebrate your successes with you? His tone was light, but his eyes were sharp, probing. When I vaguely mentioned having dinner with a friend, his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He started talking about a future collaboration, painting a picture of us as a power couple, taking the industry by storm. His vision was grand, exciting, and utterly suffocating. It was all about his vision, his terms, with me as a supporting character in his grand narrative. It was like watching a rerun of a horror movie. I knew every line, every jump scare, every twist. The charm, the intensity, the subtle undermining, the attempts to isolate and control. It was all there, a sickeningly familiar pattern. The clarity was painful. He hadn't changed. He would never change. Any hope, any lingering doubt I might have harbored evaporated in the harsh light of that coffee shop. This was who he was. This was who he would always be, and I finally saw him. Not as the charismatic enigma who had once held me captive, but as a deeply flawed, insecure man who used manipulation as a crutch. When he reached across the table, his hand covering mine, his thumb stroking my knuckles in that way that used to make me melt, I didn't pull away immediately. I looked at his hand on mine. Then I met his gaze, my own clear and steady. "Daniel," I said, my voice devoid of emotion, "this isn't going to happen." His smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "I mean us," I said, gently withdrawing my hand. "There is no us. There won't be an us. I'm not interested." His expression shifted. The charm vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then annoyance. "Eliza, I think you're misreading things. We have incredible chemistry. We could be amazing together." "No, Daniel," I said, my voice firm but quiet. "I'm reading things perfectly clearly for the first time in a long time." He tried to recover, to turn up the charm again. "Don't be like that, Eliza. We're good together. You know we are." When charm didn't work, anger began to surface. A subtle tightening of his jaw, a coldness in his eyes. "Are you serious? After all this? You're just going to walk away?" "There's nothing to walk away from, Daniel," I said, standing up. "We had coffee, twice, that's it." I placed a few bills on the table to cover my drink. "Thank you for the coffee. I have to get back to work." His face was a mask of disbelief and wounded pride. He clearly hadn't expected this. He wasn't used to rejection. He wasn't used to women not falling at his feet. "You'll regret this, Eliza," he said, his voice low and menacing. The mask was slipping. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and felt nothing. No fear, no anger, just a profound sense of pity and relief. "No, Daniel," I said softly. "I won't." And I walked away, head held high, shoulders back, not looking back. The strength I felt wasn't a performance. It was real. It was the culmination of every small victory, every reestablished boundary, every genuine connection I had forged. I had faced my demon, not to vanquish him, but to see him clearly, and in doing so, I had vanquished his hold over me. I recommitted myself to my path, my career, my friendships, the burgeoning, hopeful connection with Leo. The past was finally, truly in the past, and my future, for the first time, felt entirely my own. Walking away from Daniel truly and finally felt like a weight lifting from my soul, a weight I hadn't fully realized I was still carrying. The world seemed brighter, the air cleaner. I threw myself back into my work with renewed vigor, but this time it wasn't about proving anything to anyone, least of all to Daniel. It was for me, for the sheer joy of creating, of achieving, of building something real. My creative collaboration with Leo on his Hidden Strengths photography project deepened. Our sessions became less about posing and lighting, and more about long conversations, shared laughter, and a comfortable unspoken understanding. He had a way of seeing the world and of seeing me that was both insightful and incredibly kind. His studio, once just a workspace, began to feel like a sanctuary, a place where I could be completely myself, without pretense or fear. The exhibition of Hidden Strengths was held at a small, independent gallery that championed emerging artists. Leo had poured his heart and soul into it, and the results were breathtaking. The portraits were powerful, intimate, each one telling a story of resilience and quiet triumph. My portrait was there, larger than life. In it, I was looking directly at the camera, a small, almost imperceptible smile on my lips, my eyes clear and focused. Leo had captured not just my image, but my essence, the woman I was becoming. The opening night was a huge success. The gallery was packed with friends, family, art critics, and curious onlookers. Maya was there, beaming with pride, champagne flute in hand. James gave me a rare, heartfelt hug, whispering, "You look incredible, Eli, both in the photo and out." Vivian even made an appearance, her discerning eye taking in Leo's work. "He's got talent," she murmured to me, "and he certainly captured you." Leo, usually so reserved, was glowing, energized by the positive reception. He moved through the crowd, graciously accepting compliments, but his eyes kept finding mine, sharing small, secret smiles. And then I saw him, Daniel, standing near the entrance, his gaze fixed on my portrait. He hadn't been invited, of course. He must have seen the exhibition listing somewhere. He looked out of place. His expensive suit and polished shoes seemed too formal, too try-hard in the relaxed, artsy atmosphere of the gallery. He saw me watching him. Then his gaze shifted to Leo, who was now standing beside me, his arm lightly brushing mine as we talked to a group of admirers. Daniel's expression was unreadable, but I could feel the waves of his displeasure, his jealousy, radiating across the room. He didn't approach. After a few moments, he turned and slipped out, unnoticed by most. Seeing him there, watching Leo and me, didn't give me a thrill of vengeful satisfaction. Just made me feel tired. He was a ghost from a past I was rapidly outgrowing. Later that evening, after the crowds had thinned, Leo found me standing alone, contemplating my portrait. "So," he said softly, coming to stand beside me. "What do you think?" "I think," I began, my voice a little choked with emotion. "I think you see me more clearly than I see myself sometimes." He turned to me, his eyes warm and serious. "I see someone strong, Eliza. Someone beautiful. Someone who deserves to be happy." My breath caught. There it was again. That disarming sincerity, that genuine kindness. It was terrifying and wonderful. My vulnerability barrier, the one I'd so carefully constructed after Daniel, was still firmly in place. Letting someone in, truly in, felt like a monumental risk. What if I was wrong? What if I got hurt again? Daniel had conditioned me to expect betrayal, to anticipate pain. But Leo wasn't Daniel. He was Leo. Kind, gentle, talented, and increasingly, someone I found myself thinking about constantly, someone whose smile made my stomach flip, someone whose presence made me feel safe, seen, and cherished. I was beginning to recognize the feelings I had for him, feelings that went beyond friendship, beyond creative collaboration. They were deeper, more tender, more hopeful. But the fear of trusting those feelings, of opening myself up again, was a powerful deterrent. I talked to Maya about it late one night over too much wine. "He's amazing, May. He's everything Daniel wasn't, and that's what scares me." Maya, bless her practical heart, just rolled her eyes. "So you're scared because he's a good guy? Eli, that's messed up, even for you." She softened. "Look, I get it. Daniel did a number on you. But you can't let that asshole dictate the rest of your love life. Leo seems like a genuinely good egg. Maybe, just maybe, you deserve a good egg." James, in his own quiet way, offered similar advice. "You've built a good life for yourself, Eliza. You're strong. You're happy. Don't be afraid to share that with someone who deserves you." Their words resonated. Was I really going to let Daniel's ghost continue to haunt my future? Was I going to let fear dictate my choices? A few days after the exhibition, Leo called. "So," he said, his voice a little hesitant, "now that we're not officially artist and subject anymore, I was wondering, would you like to have dinner? A proper date? No cameras, no gallery openings, just us." My heart did a little dance. This was it, a chance to take a risk, a small one, perhaps, but a risk nonetheless, towards something potentially wonderful. I took a deep breath. "Leo," I said, a smile in my voice, "I'd like that very much." The fear was still there, a faint tremor in the background. But for the first time, the hope was louder, stronger, and I chose to listen to that. Our first proper date was at a cozy little Thai restaurant that Leo loved. The air was fragrant with lemongrass and chili, the lighting soft and intimate. I'd been a bundle of nerves all day, second-guessing my outfit, replaying potential conversations in my head. The old Eliza, the one desperate for approval, had tried to make a comeback. But as soon as I saw Leo waiting for me outside the restaurant, his shy smile instantly putting me at ease, the anxiety began to recede. The conversation flowed as easily as it always did between us. But there was a new undercurrent. a subtle shift in energy. We talked about everything and nothing. Our favorite childhood books, travel dreams, a hilariously bad movie we'd both seen. He told me about his family, his passion for capturing fleeting moments of beauty in the mundane. I found myself opening up too, sharing stories about my own upbringing, my rediscovered love for art, my ambitions for the future. It was so different from my dates with Daniel. Those had always felt like a performance, an audition. Daniel had been intense, overwhelming, his charm a relentless barrage. He'd talked mostly about himself, his achievements, his plans. I'd been a supporting character in his narrative, desperately trying to say and do the right things to keep his attention. With Leo, there was no performance, no pressure. He listened, truly listened, his gaze attentive, his questions thoughtful. He seemed genuinely interested in me, in my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences. It was calmer, yes, safer. But there was an excitement, too, a quiet thrill in the authenticity of our connection. It felt real. At one point, he reached across the table and gently took my hand. His touch was warm, hesitant, sending a little jolt of electricity through me. "Eliza," he said, his eyes searching mine. "I know you've been through it a lot. I don't know the details, and you don't have to share them unless you want to. But I just want you to know, I'm not him." His words, so simple, so direct, hit me with the force of a revelation. He saw my guardedness, my hesitation, and he didn't push, he didn't demand, he just understood. Tears pricked at my eyes. "Thank you, Leo," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "That means more than you know." He told me then about his own past relationship, a long-term girlfriend who had ended things abruptly, leaving him heartbroken and wary of trusting again. His vulnerability was disarming, creating a space for my own. "Daniel, he was my ex," I found myself saying, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. He wasn't a good person. He made me believe I was worthless, unlovable. It was the first time I'd said those words aloud to anyone but Maya. Leo's grip on my hand tightened, his expression a mixture of anger and compassion. "Anyone who made you feel that way, Eliza, is a fool and a liar. You are none of those things." His unwavering belief in me, his quiet defense of my worth, was like a soothing balm on old wounds. I shared a little more, not the whole sordid story of the rebirth, but enough for him to understand the depth of the scars Daniel had left. He listened without judgment, his empathy a tangible presence between us. Trusting him with those small pieces of myself, those vulnerable fragments of my past, felt like a monumental step. And his reaction, his gentle acceptance, his unwavering support made me feel safe, truly safe, for the first time in a very, very long time. After dinner, we walked through the crisp night air, our shoulders brushing occasionally. The city lights twinkled around us, a magical backdrop to a night that felt increasingly significant. He walked me to my doorstep. There was a moment of comfortable silence, an unspoken question hanging in the air. "I had a really wonderful time tonight, Eliza," he said, his voice soft. "Me too, Leo," I replied, my heart fluttering. He leaned in then, slowly, tentatively. His lips met mine, a gentle, hesitant kiss that was a universe away from Daniel's demanding, possessive embraces. It was a kiss that asked, rather than took. A kiss that promised, rather than threatened. It was sweet and warm and utterly, breathtakingly real. And I kissed him back, without the anxiety, without the fear, without the desperate need for validation that had plagued my past. I kissed him back with a sense of hope, of possibility, of a future I was finally ready to embrace. As I watched him walk away, a small smile playing on my lips, I knew something profound had shifted within me. I was making choices based on what I wanted, not on fear or obligation. I was opening myself up to the possibility of love, not as a means of validation, but as a genuine, authentic connection with another human being. Unbeknownst to me, Daniel had learned about my developing relationship with Leo. Carter Reed, his supposed best friend, had casually mentioned seeing us at the Thai restaurant. a fact Carter would later confess to me with a heavy heart. Daniel's reaction, Carter had said, was unsettling, a flash of something dark and possessive in his eyes. But in that moment, standing on my doorstep, the warmth of Leo's kiss still lingering on my lips, Daniel Walker was the furthest thing from my mind. I was too busy contemplating a future that suddenly seemed full of light and hope and the quiet, steady promise of authentic connection. The weeks that followed were a blur of exciting developments, both personally and professionally. My relationship with Leo deepened, settling into a comfortable rhythm of shared laughter, quiet evenings, and a growing, tender intimacy. He was everything Daniel wasn't: patient, supportive, kind. He celebrated my successes without a hint of jealousy, listened to my anxieties without judgment, and made me feel cherished for exactly who I was. The contrast was a daily reminder of how far I'd come and how much I'd learned. At Creative Spark, my star continued its ascent. Vivian, true to her word, had recognized my talent and drive. A few weeks after the successful launch of the tech campaign, she called me into her office. "Eliza," she said, a rare, genuine smile on her face, "I've been watching you. You've grown incredibly in the past few months. Your work is consistently brilliant, your leadership undeniable. The clients love you, the team respects you." My heart began to pound. I had a feeling I knew where this was going. "We're restructuring the creative department," Vivian continued, "and I can't think of anyone better suited to lead our new flagship team. Eliza Chen, I'm offering you the position of creative lead." Creative lead. It was a huge step up. More responsibility, a bigger team, a chance to truly shape the creative direction of some of our biggest accounts. The old Eliza would have been terrified, riddled with self-doubt. The new Eliza? She felt a thrill of excitement, a surge of quiet confidence. "Vivian," I said, my voice steady, I'm honored, thank you. I accept." Managing a team was a new challenge, but one I embraced. I consciously chose a leadership style that was the polar opposite of Daniel's controlling, manipulative nature. I fostered collaboration, encouraged open communication, and made sure every member of my team felt valued and heard. We celebrated successes together and tackled challenges as a unit, and it worked. Our team became known for its innovative ideas, its positive energy, and its consistent high-quality results. Occasionally, our work would bring us into contact with Daniel's company, Walker Innovations. They were a competitor on some accounts, a potential collaborator on others. My interactions with Daniel were strictly professional, brief, and to the point. He was always polite, always charming, but there was an undercurrent of tension, a subtle resentment in his eyes, whenever he witnessed my growing confidence, my easy rapport with my team. Through the industry grapevine, I heard whispers. Daniel was telling a different story about our brief connection. He was painting himself as the one who had ended things, the one who had seen through my supposed ambition. He was trying to rewrite history, to control the narrative, as he always did. It was pathetic and a little sad, but it no longer had the power to hurt me. I knew the truth, and more importantly, I knew my own worth. My circle of friends, Maya, James, my colleagues, my new friends from Leo's art circle, continued to be a source of unwavering support and joy. They celebrated my promotion, cheered on my relationship with Leo, and provided a constant reminder of what genuine, healthy connections felt like. One evening, Leo and I were cooking dinner together in my apartment, the air filled with the aroma of garlic and herbs, and the comfortable sound of our laughter. He'd just finished telling me a hilarious story about a disastrous photo shoot involving a temperamental cat. "You know," he said, stirring the pasta sauce, his expression suddenly serious, "you seem really happy, Eliza, truly happy." I paused, a wine glass halfway to my lips, and I realized, with a jolt of profound understanding, that he was right. I was happy, deeply, authentically happy. The kind of happiness that radiated from within, that wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval or validation. The last vestiges of Daniel's voice in my head, the whispers of doubt and insecurity, had finally faded. I no longer needed his permission to be happy, to be successful, to be loved. I believed in my own worth, my own value, with a certainty that was unshakable. My professional triumph wasn't just about a new title or a bigger paycheck. It was about reclaiming my passion, finding my voice, and proving to myself that I was capable of achieving anything I set my mind to. It was about stepping into my own power on my own terms. And that, I realized, was the greatest triumph of all. The invitation arrived on crisp, expensive cardstock, the annual AdFed Awards Gala. It was the industry's biggest night, a glittering affair celebrating the best and brightest in advertising. This year, however, it felt different. This year, I wasn't just an attendee, I was a nominee. Creative Spark had submitted our tech campaign for several awards, and my name was listed as Creative Lead. More surprisingly, Vivian had also nominated me for the Rising Star Award, an individual honor recognizing up-and-coming talent. The thought of attending was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. It would be a public acknowledgement of how far I'd come. Leo, bless his supportive heart, was even more excited than I was. "You have to go, Eliza," he'd exclaimed, his eyes shining. "And I'll be right there beside you, your biggest fan." Our relationship had blossomed into something truly special, a partnership built on trust, respect, and a deep, abiding affection. He was my rock, my confidant, my quiet champion. Knowing he'd be there made the prospect of the gala infinitely less daunting. As the date approached, a familiar sense of anticipation, tinged with a new kind of dread, began to build. Daniel would be there. Walker Innovations was a major player in the industry. He wouldn't miss an event like this. This wouldn't be a chance encounter in a coffee shop or a brief professional interaction in a boardroom. This would be a spectacle. Him watching me, potentially being celebrated, surrounded by people who admired and respected me. The thought was both terrifying and, I had to admit, a little bit satisfying. I confided in Maya and James. Maya, true to form, was already planning my outfit. "You need to look drop-dead gorgeous, Eli. Like, eat your heart out, you manipulative bastard gorgeous." James, more reserved, simply squeezed my hand. "You've got this, Eliza. Just be yourself. That's more than enough." The night of the gala arrived, a swirl of flashing camera bulbs, designer gowns, and the low hum of industry power players schmoozing. I took a deep breath as Leo and I stepped out of the car. The cool night air, a welcome contrast to the nervous heat coiling in my stomach. I was wearing a simple, elegant, deep blue gown that Maya had helped me choose. It made me feel confident, powerful, and, for the first time in my life, truly beautiful. Leo, devastatingly handsome in a classic tuxedo, took my arm, his smile reassuring. "You look breathtaking, Eliza," he whispered, his eyes full of admiration. We walked the red carpet, a surreal experience. I saw familiar faces, colleagues, clients, even a few industry bigwigs Vivian had introduced me to. There were smiles, nods of recognition, genuine expressions of goodwill. It was a far cry from the isolated, invisible woman I had once been. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of glittering chandeliers and elegantly dressed attendees. My eyes scanned the crowd, almost involuntarily. And then I saw him, Daniel. Standing near the bar, a drink in his hand, his gaze already fixed on me. He was with a group of people, but his attention was solely, intensely, focused on my entrance. I didn't flinch, I didn't look away. I met his gaze, held it for a moment, then turned my attention back to Leo, a small, confident smile playing on my lips. Let him watch. The evening progressed in a blur of polite conversation, clinking champagne glasses, and nervous anticipation. Our tech campaign won an award for Best Digital Strategy. I went up to the stage with Vivian and the team, my heart pounding, a wave of pride washing over me as I accepted the sleek, modern trophy. I caught Daniel's eye again as I returned to my seat. His expression was carefully neutral, but there was a tightness around his mouth, a flicker of something dark in his eyes. Then came the Rising Star Award. The presenter, a well-respected industry veteran, read out the list of nominees. My name was among them. My hands clenched in Leo's under the table. "And the AdFed Rising Star Award goes to..." The presenter paused for dramatic effect. "Eliza Chen of Creative Spark." A wave of disbelief, followed by an overwhelming surge of emotion, washed over me. Leo squeezed my hand, his face alight with pride. Maya, who was at a nearby table, let out a whoop of joy. I made my way to the stage, my legs feeling a little shaky, my mind racing. I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. I saw Vivian smiling proudly. I saw Maya wiping away a tear. I saw Leo, his gaze full of love and unwavering support. And I saw Daniel, his face a stony mask, his eyes boring into me. I took a deep breath. This was my moment, my chance to speak my truth. Wow, I began, my voice a little breathless. I'm truly honored and a little overwhelmed. I thanked Vivian, Creative Spark, my team. And then, my gaze drifted towards Daniel, though I didn't look at him directly. This award, it's not just about professional achievement for me, I continued, my voice gaining strength. It's about finding your voice. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about learning to believe in yourself, even when others try to diminish you, to tell you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. The room was silent. I could feel the weight of Daniel's stare, a physical pressure, but I wasn't afraid. There will always be people, I said, my voice clear and strong, who try to silence you, to control you, to make you feel small. They do it because they are small. They do it because your light shines too brightly and reminds them of their own darkness. I paused, letting the words sink in. But your worth is not determined by their opinion. Your value is not up for their debate. It resides within you. And the moment you realize that, the moment you truly own your power, your voice, that's when you become unstoppable. I looked out at the audience, a genuine smile spreading across my face. So, thank you for this incredible honor, and to anyone out there who has ever felt diminished, silenced, or unseen. Find your voice, own your power, and shine, because you deserve to. The applause was deafening, a standing ovation. As I walked off the stage, clutching my award, my heart full, I didn't look at Daniel. I didn't need to. I knew he'd heard every word, and I knew, with a certainty that resonated deep in my soul, that my message had hit its mark. Not as an act of revenge, but as a declaration of my own hard-won liberation. The rest of the evening was a joyous blur. Congratulations, hugs, champagne toasts. Leo barely left my side, his pride in me radiating like a warm glow. Maya was ecstatic, recounting every detail of my speech to anyone who would listen. Even Vivian gave me a rare, almost maternal hug. But I knew it wasn't over. Daniel wouldn't let it be. He was a man who needed to control the narrative, to have the last word. I could feel his eyes on me throughout the post-awards mingling, a simmering intensity that promised a reckoning. It came, as I knew it would, when I stepped away from the celebratory crowd for a moment of quiet, seeking refuge near a deserted corridor leading to the restrooms. Eliza! His voice, low and dangerously smooth, cut through the distant din of the party. I turned. He was standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable, his hands thrust into the pockets of his tuxedo. "Daniel," I said, my voice calm, my posture relaxed. I would not let him see any lingering fear, any hint of intimidation. He took a step closer. The charming mask was gone. This was the Daniel I remembered from the darkest days of our relationship, the one whose eyes held a chilling glint of something predatory. "Quite a speech," he said, his lips curling into a sneer. "Very inspiring." "I meant every word," I replied, meeting his gaze directly. "Oh, I'm sure you did," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "All that talk about being diminished, silenced, you were talking about me, weren't you?" "If the shoe fits, Daniel," I said, my tone even. He laughed, a short, harsh sound. "You always were dramatic, Eliza, twisting things, playing the victim." There it was, the gaslighting, the attempt to rewrite reality, to make me doubt my own perceptions. The old Eliza would have faltered, questioned herself, maybe even apologized. "Not this time." "No, Daniel," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not playing the victim. I'm stating facts. You spent 6 years systematically undermining my confidence, isolating me from my friends and family, convincing me I was worthless. That's not drama. That's emotional abuse." His eyes narrowed. "That's a strong accusation." "It's the truth," I said. "And you know it?" He tried a different tactic. charm. He stepped closer, his voice softening, becoming that persuasive, intimate murmur that had once been my undoing. Eliza, come on. We had some good times, didn't we? I cared about you, deeply. Maybe I made some mistakes, I'm not perfect. But to say I abused you, that's not fair. Good times, I repeated, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. Our good times were punctuated by your moods, your criticism, your constant need for control. You didn't care about me, Daniel. You cared about owning me, about molding me into what you wanted. I saw the flicker of surprise in his eyes. He wasn't used to being called out so directly, so accurately. You know, I continued, my voice gaining strength, a cold anger beginning to replace the calm. I used to spend hours trying to understand why you did it. What made you so cruel, so manipulative? I was never cruel to you, he protested, his voice rising. Weren't you? I countered. Telling me no one else could tolerate me? That I was lucky to have you? That my friends were bad influences? That my family didn't understand our special connection? That my passions were silly? That my ambitions were a threat? Is that not cruel, Daniel? He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. You know what your problem is, Daniel? You're a black hole. You suck the light out of everyone around you because you have no light of your own. You build yourself up by tearing others down. It's pathetic. His charming facade finally, irrevocably cracked. The anger he'd been simmering beneath the surface erupted. You ungrateful bitch, he hissed, his face contorted with rage. I gave you 6 years of my life. I taught you everything you know. You taught me how to be small, I shot back, my voice ringing with conviction. You taught me how to doubt myself. You taught me how to disappear, and you know what? I'm a fast learner, but I'm an even faster unlearner. The insecurity, the raw, gaping wound at the core of his being was laid bare. His handsome features were twisted into an ugly mask of fury and wounded pride. He looked diminished, defeated. You think you're so special now? He sneered, gesturing vaguely towards the ballroom. With your little award and your new boy toy photographer? My award, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm, is a testament to my talent, a talent you tried to extinguish. And Leo? Leo is a good man, a kind man, something you wouldn't understand. I took a step closer, my gaze unwavering. You know what I've learned, Daniel? I've learned that my worth isn't determined by you or by any man. It comes from within. I've learned that authentic connections are built on respect and support, not control and manipulation. And I've learned that happiness, true happiness, is something you build for yourself. He was speechless, his chest heaving, his eyes blazing with impotent rage. I delivered my final words, the ones that had been waiting, coiled and ready for this very moment. The words that would finally, truly set me free. You said no one would ever love me like you did, I said, my voice clear and steady, echoing in the sudden silence between us. You said no one else could tolerate me. I paused, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. Look around, Daniel. I gestured back towards the ballroom, towards the sounds of laughter and celebration, towards the life I had built for myself. Everyone loves me, not because they tolerate me, but because I finally love myself. His face crumpled. The fight went out of him. He looked, for the first time, truly defeated. Small, insignificant. I held his gaze for a moment longer, then turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the corridor, a relic of a past I had finally completely transcended. The confrontation was over, and I had won, not by destroying him, but by reclaiming myself. Chapter 16, Aftermath. Walking away from Daniel, from that final cathartic confrontation, felt like shedding the last layer of an old, suffocating skin. The adrenaline was still coursing through my veins, making my hands tremble slightly, but beneath it was a profound sense of peace, a lightness, closure. Leo found me a few minutes later, his eyes full of concern. Eliza, are you okay? You were gone for a while. I saw Daniel follow you out. I took a deep, shaky breath and managed a smile. A real one. I'm okay, Leo, more than okay. It's finally over. He didn't press for details. He just wrapped his arm around me, pulling me close, offering silent, unwavering support. He had this incredible ability to know what I needed without me having to say a word. He provided a safe space for me to process, without trying to fix anything, without trying to control the situation. He just held me. And in that moment, his quiet strength was everything. We stayed at the gala for a little while longer, but the celebratory buzz had taken on a new meaning for me. It wasn't just about professional success anymore. It was about personal liberation. As we were preparing to leave, a figure approached us hesitantly. It was Carter Reed, Daniel's supposed best friend, the one who had been a silent witness to so much of Daniel's manipulative behavior over the years. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting nervously between me and Leo. "Eliza," he began, his voice low, Can I talk to you for a moment, alone?" Leo gave my hand a reassuring squeeze and stepped back, giving us space. "Carter," I said, my tone neutral. I had no idea what to expect. "Look," he said, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. I saw what happened with Daniel, and I heard your speech, and I needed to say, you were right, about everything." I waited, unsure where this was going. "I've known Daniel for years," Carter continued, his gaze fixed on the floor. "And I've seen him do it. To you. To other women before you. The charm, the manipulation, the way he isolates people, breaks them down. I saw it all, and I didn't do anything. I stood by, I enabled him, because he was my friend, because it was easier." His confession hung in the air, heavy with regret. "But tonight," he said, finally looking up, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and a newfound resolve. "Seeing you stand up to him like that, hearing your words, it made me realize, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being complicit in his bullshit." He took a deep breath. "He has a pattern, Eliza. A long, destructive pattern. And I've helped him cover it up. But not anymore. Your confrontation tonight, it was a wake-up call. I'm done enabling him. I'm done making excuses for him." His words were unexpected, but they resonated with a surprising sense of validation. It wasn't just me. It wasn't in my head. Daniel's abuse was real, and others had seen it. "Thank you, Carter," I said, my voice softer than I intended. That means a lot." "No," he said, shaking his head. "Thank you. You're incredibly strong, Eliza. What you did tonight, it took guts. And maybe, just maybe, it'll make a difference." He hesitated. "I'm going to try and talk to some of the other women he's hurt. Maybe if we all, I don't know, maybe we can stop him from doing this to anyone else." An unlikely alliance forged in the aftermath of a painful confrontation. It wasn't something I had sought, but it felt right. Like another small piece of the healing puzzle clicking into place. As Leo and I drove home through the sleeping city, a profound sense of closure settled over me. It wasn't just about Daniel anymore. It was about me. About the life I had built, the strength I had found, the love I was now capable of giving and receiving. I looked out at the glittering lights, a future stretching before me, bright and full of promise. The rebirth, the second chance, whatever it was, had been a gift. A chance to rewrite my story, not for revenge, but for redemption, my own redemption. Leo reached over and took my hand, his touch warm and reassuring. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. In the comfortable silence, I saw our future, professional and personal, unfolding with a quiet, steady grace. The journey had been long and arduous, but I had finally arrived, home, within myself. Chapter 17, Full Circle. A year, 12 months since that night at the AdFed Awards Gala, the night I'd finally, irrevocably closed the door on Daniel Walker and stepped fully into my own life. It felt like a lifetime ago, and yet the clarity and peace of that moment still resonated within me, a steady, grounding force. Life had continued its beautiful, upward trajectory. Professionally, I was thriving. As creative lead, I'd spearheaded several successful campaigns, earning accolades for myself and for Creative Spark. My team was a well-oiled machine, a testament to collaborative leadership and mutual respect. I found immense satisfaction in mentoring younger creatives, especially young women, subtly guiding them to recognize their own worth, to trust their instincts, to spot the early warning signs of manipulation in any relationship, professional or personal. I never mentioned Daniel by name, but my experiences, distilled into hard-won wisdom, became a quiet source of strength for others. My relationship with Leo was the bedrock of my personal happiness. It was a love story written in quiet moments, shared laughter, and unwavering support. We'd moved in together, our apartment a cozy haven filled with art, books, and the comforting aroma of Leo's surprisingly good cooking. We challenged each other, celebrated each other, and navigated the small bumps of life with a gentle understanding that still, after all this time, filled me with a sense of wonder. He was my partner, my best friend, my greatest love. A love that didn't seek to diminish or control, but to uplift and cherish. As for Daniel, his star had considerably dimmed. Carter, true to his word, had stopped enabling him. He'd even, I heard through the grapevine, reached out to some of the other women Daniel had harmed, creating a small, informal network of support and shared experience. Without his enablers, without the silence that had protected him for so long, Daniel's manipulative tactics became more transparent, his charm less effective. He'd lost a few key accounts, his reputation tarnished by whispers of his unprofessional conduct and volatile temperament. He was still around, still a player in the industry, but his power, his influence had waned. He was no longer the golden boy, the charismatic leader. He was just Daniel, a man haunted by his own insecurities, his own destructive patterns. I rarely thought about him anymore. When I did, it wasn't with anger or fear, but with a distant, almost detached pity. He was a chapter in my story, a catalyst for my transformation. But he was no longer the main character, IBUA's the main character. The mystery of my rebirth still lingered in the back of my mind, an unanswered question, a ripple in the fabric of reality. Why me? How? I'd stopped trying to find a logical explanation. Perhaps some things weren't meant to be understood, only experienced. Perhaps it was a fluke, a glitch in the universe. Or perhaps, as I'd come to believe, it was a profound, inexplicable gift. One sunny afternoon, Leo and I were walking through a park, hand in hand. Children were laughing, dogs were chasing frisbees. The scent of freshly cut grass filled the air. It was a perfect, ordinary day. And in its ordinariness, I found a profound sense of peace. "What are you smiling about?" Leo asked, squeezing my hand. I looked at him, at his kind eyes, his gentle smile, the love that shone so clearly between us. I thought of Maya, her fierce loyalty, her infectious laugh. Of James, his quiet strength, his unwavering support. Of Vivian, who had seen my potential long before I saw it myself. Of my team, my friends, the vibrant tapestry of connections I had woven around me. Just everything, I said, my voice soft. This life, this incredible, messy, beautiful life. And in that moment, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The rebirth, the second chance. It hadn't been about Daniel at all. It hadn't been about revenge, or proving him wrong, or even about him witnessing my transformation. He was merely a supporting player in my story, a dark contrast that highlighted the brightness of my own journey. The rebirth had been about me, about reclaiming myself, about shedding the layers of self-doubt and fear that had held me captive for so long, about discovering my own worth, my own strength, my own voice, about learning to love myself unconditionally, fiercely, and unapologetically. Because the truth was, Daniel hadn't been the only one who needed to see me beloved by everyone. I had needed to see it. I had needed to feel it. Not as external validation, but as a reflection of the love I had finally, painstakingly cultivated within myself. I leaned my head on Leo's shoulder, a profound sense of gratitude washing over me. The journey had been a circle, from devastation to rebirth, from fear to love. And at the center of it all, I had found the most important love of all, the love for the woman I had become. Eliza Chen, whole, happy, and finally, truly free. And as I looked around at the life I had built, the love I was surrounded by, I knew with every fiber of my being that this was not an ending. It was just the beginning.